Welcome to The State of Us. Real people with honest opinions and the future of responsible media. Here's your host, Justin T. Weller.
Welcome and thank you for tuning in. Tech tips from Gen Z. We're going to look at all the ways that Gen Z perceives technology as some of the top 6 most common ways and kind of discuss the pros and cons of that. But of course, we couldn't begin this conversation without
your friendly redneck liberal, Lance Jackson.
Well, I'm looking forward to this because, we're talking about young people. So it's the youngest of the generations. At least anybody older than 5, right? Is that pretty much what you're telling me? So,
yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Older than 5 up to 22-ish.
All right. Here we go.
Yep. So we'll get into that and look at more, but we're going to try to have an honest, open, and respectful conversation, right?
That's what our hope is every day.
And if people are concerned that we don't uphold that throughout this show, ethics at TrueChat.org.
There you go. Ethics.
Right. Ethics.
Comes first.
Email.
Ethics
email
comes first.
Email.
Email ethics.
That's right. That's the key. Okay. So tech survival tips from Gen Z. So Lance, tell us, who's Gen Z?
I don't know. They're related to Roku?
Not directly, no.
Oh, okay. They're the youngins, right? They're like the ones that are born after the millennia. So they were born in the 2000s or something?
Yes.
Okay.
Born.
They follow you, millennium people, millennium Falcons.
Right. They're 1997 and after.
97 and after.
Yeah. Depending on who you ask. Could be 96 to 98 to 2000. Who knows? But yeah, in that range. Generally
I was
speaking.
the end of the baby boomers, and then they upped it to 64. So now I'm not even.
Right.
They don't even count me. There for a while I wasn't even counted because baby boomers stopped in 60.
Yeah.
And I was born in 61.
And then you got counted.
Then I got counted. Then they upped it to 64. So then they just make up their mind.
Right. Okay.
All right. So these what are they called?
Gen Zs. Yeah.
Gen
I call them the
Z.
last generation. Remember?
The last
generation. Yep. They're it. No more.
Okay.
Surprise.
Nobody's been born since then.
No, technically there is technically Gen Z's over. There's no more being born.
Really?
Yeah. Because that, like at most you have a 15-year span or so,
Okay.
right? 15 to 20-year span. So if the oldest ones right now.
So the ones that are 4 and 5 are
22.
Yeah.
Then.
So the ones that are 4 and 5, they've got their own generation.
They don't have a name though.
Okay. Those are the people I'm down with right now.
Yeah.
They're my buddies.
Those are your favorites?
Oh yeah. I like the little kids.
Throw Gen Z out. So number one tech survival tip from Gen Z. This is of course from the Wall Street Journal again.
So these people have just started working, the oldest ones.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. They're just starting
When
to work.
life changes. Okay.
Yes.
Reality sets in.
Yes. Older people will say young people don't hang out with their friends in real life anymore. And that's according to a Gen Z person.
Well, they do, but they all look at their phones together.
And she says, for my generation, interacting digitally is still, quote, in real life. Gen Z doesn't distinguish between online and IRL, which is in real life.
Gotcha.
It's the same. It's just one and the same.
Yeah, it's not, but okay.
Okay.
They know what they know, and they don't know what they don't know.
They know. That would be a fact. Mm-hmm. That is, yep, it's indisputable. Number 2, privacy online, Lance. It says privacy online LOL. What's LOL stand for?
Laugh out loud.
Okay. Or it's not used this way anymore, but for old people.
Oh, it used to be AOL. I don't know.
I remember AOL. For the most part, members of Gen Z.
What did LOL used to stand for?
Lots of love.
Lots of love.
Yeah, that's an old person thing.
Younger than me.
Okay.
I never used it.
For the most part, members of Gen Z expect that everything they ever type into a keyboard or capture with a camera is forever and could easily end up all over the internet.
They know that or they don't know that?
They know that. That should make you happy, right?
The ones I talk to don't. The ones on my basketball team don't.
Well,
because I tell them all the time. They're like, what?
Many feel that at any point in their lives, they could be judged by their most impulsive posts, so they can never let down their guard. This can be exhausting. Real-life conversations and phone calls have become the only way to convey thoughts in a way that's truly private.
Well, I'm glad they know that. I mean, it's good that they, realize that. But if they talk IRL, then they wouldn't have to worry about LOL.
Yeah.
Facebook's
out, Lance.
Because if I say I was never been on Facebook.
Okay. But your wife is.
That's a sore subject.
Her and I are friends.
That's nice. I'm glad she's got some.
I see pictures of you sometimes.
I know. I don't like it at all.
You're on Facebook, whether you want to be or not.
I understand that. My wife gets requests all the time. So are you the Mrs. Jackson's who related to the guy who used to teach at the high school? Yes, I am. How do I get a hold of him? You can't. That's right.
That's right.
That's the way it works.
Instagram is in. You know about Instagram?
Instagram. Yes, I do.
Can you describe
I know
Instagram?
more. No.
Oh,
I know my daughters are big into Snapchat.
Yeah.
Because it disappears if you don't look at it fast.
That's
something like that, right?
Yes. It's very appealing for people who value privacy. There's air quotes there because, generally speaking, after a certain amount of time, what you've sent disappears.
Right.
So
that's what I've been told.
Yeah. In some cases, you can only watch it once, and the sender chooses how long you can look at it for, with, I believe, the most being 10 seconds. So you can set a shorter duration, but once it's played, sometimes you get one replay and that's it. So
to answer your question, no, I'm not. I couldn't tell you how Instagram works.
So it's the easiest way to describe it would be like a photo sharing website. So as opposed to, you can share photos on Facebook, right?
I've heard.
Okay. Because we just established that I've seen photos of you there. This is, I wish I could say it was unique, but it's unique in the respect that the focus is photos. So every post has a photo. In other words, you can't put content out if it doesn't have a photo. And then you can put a caption below the photo if you want. And that caption could be relevant or not relevant. It doesn't matter.
So what are the Gen Zers going to do when Instagram ceases to exist? Will they drive the market?
Well, Instagram's owned by Facebook, so I don't think it's...
but something new will come along.
Well, sure.
Somebody else will start something.
But until they die, it'll be relevant. Just like Facebook's going to be relevant until I die, I guess.
You think?
Sure.
I don't think so.
Because the way it works is, whatever the new thing is.
Because there used to be a thing called IM, Instant Messenger. And it died out because something better came along.
It did and it didn't.
So they used,
because
they used instant messaging and it doesn't still exist.
Well, it does. It does. It exists. It exists in the traditional format that you kind of think of, but the way that it's really survived is through basically, what Facebook calls Facebook Messenger. Which is just an instant messaging platform.
Okay.
They just dropped the instant part because it's assumed that online communication is instant.
But payphones used to exist and now I can't find any.
That's right. There are still some. They're just harder to find.
Oh, really? Okay.
Just like finding people on IM would probably be challenging. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, when you say it will continue to exist, really? Because to me, technology changes so quickly that something else is going to replace it, and the Gen Zers will use that, and it'll die out, and IMing will die out, or messaging will die out.
Maybe, but at the same time, you have older individuals have really started to populate Facebook pretty heavily. In fact, one of the best places to get engagement from the 40 and up crowd is on Facebook. If you're looking for, think about it. Generally speaking, logically, again, it makes sense. If you're retired at some point, you have more time on your hands. You have more time to look at stuff, means you have more time to engage with stuff. Hence, the engagement rate goes up.
I read books. I read magazines.
I understand. It doesn't mean they don't. It just means that they also partake in the consumption of other people's lives through a digital medium. I'm right there. He's shaking his head for those of you who can't see it. Why is everybody
so worried about everybody else's life? Don't you have enough issues with your own life?
I don't know. I wish I could answer it for you. I'm just not one of those people. As you obviously know, or we probably wouldn't be friends. So.
I don't know.
We couldn't be Facebook friends.
It's just a scary thought when everybody's so worried about people that they've never even heard of, and they don't take care of their own issues within their own families or circle of friends. Oh, that's right. They don't have any friends because they're always online.
Well,
so
but
they
see,
don't
they
know
do.
how to interact face to face.
The contention is that, and I can speak to this, I mean, to an extent, because there was a time where the online world was important to me. It's not so much anymore. And that might be an age thing, but then again, there's lots of people who are your age or my age who, so obviously it's not a, you age out
I'm
of
old
social
and you're
media.
young. Yeah.
Right. So it's not that simple, but
that's how my wife describes me to everybody. He's the old guy over there. Oh, okay. Then
right.
I am. Right.
It's like what we talked about before. There's a pro and a con, or many pros and many cons to lots of things. One of the cons, I think, is that society spends a lot of time consuming generally what we would consider to be completely irrelevant content. In other words, it's used to waste time.
Yes.
But the reason is because they're sorting for the things that they want to actually look at. The friends they do care about.
So what else do the Gen Zers tell us are the up and coming things? Or is that it?
No, there's three more.
Okay.
Social media is how they stay informed. So Tiffany Zong, 22, who is chief executive of Zebra IQ, which helps companies get insights on Gen Z, in a focus group that included 20 members of her generation from across the U.S., she found their news consumption was almost entirely driven by social media. They weren't seeking out the news, only happening on it, and they read a lot of headlines.
Yeah. Well, that's probably what they can handle at this age. So at least they're looking for some news. I'll try to put a positive spin on that.
Okay.
What's next?
Gen Z thinks that concerns about screens are overblown. Quote, I felt a lot of what was being written about young people and technology didn't put into words what social media meant to me as someone who already had Facebook when I was at school. Some members of Gen Z are left feeling that media is obsessed with the negative impact of tech and doesn't talk enough about how it empowers their generation. Whether it's helping them stay connected with friends when their helicopter parents won't let them out of the house, or finding people who share similar interests. The mobile internet is a powerful force for making this generation aware of the breadth of experience of their peers, which, factually speaking, we do know because, as we had talked about, when doing polling around the world, generationally speaking, Gen Z is the least differentiated from its peer group than any other generation has ever been. Which, sure, there's some downsides too, but I think that you and I both agreed on that episode. It's mainly an upside in that there's more humanity in people in Russia. Really, while they live a different life, they want most of what I want, you know, and it extends that appreciation for, you know, intercontinental, international sorts of individuals, learning more about what other people around the world are doing. So a positive from that standpoint. I said to Lance before the show, number 5, I kind of agree with, because I think that it feels like there's an outsized balance on the negative.
There's one word in there, and it's been in my crawl for a couple of weeks now, and that is it's going to empower young people. Uh-huh. They're kids. They shouldn't be empowered. That's part of our problem in this country, is that the tail's wagging the dog. We follow what young people say. It's like, you haven't had the experiences yet. So you know what? Because when I was that age, adults didn't listen to me. I listened to them and I learned from them. And then I learned what was right and I felt what was wrong. And then when I got there, I could change it. Now it's like, oh, well, these 12-year-olds said this, so this is what we all have to do. And we all jump in lockstep to follow the 12-year-olds. And they don't have the life experiences yet. I'm not trying to be mean.
But you've also learned from kids. I mean, from having kids, would you say that your kids taught you anything? Not intentionally. I'm not saying they sat you down and said, Dad, I'm going to teach you something. I mean, maybe they did that, but I mean like life lessons learned from observing and working with children for 30 years and still to this day.
Yes. And the main thing I learned is that we can't let them lead and direct what they should know and what they should be doing, because they're going to make mistakes. That's why they're kids, because kids make mistakes.
Adults don't?
I don't work with adults. I worked with young people.
I know. I'm asking.
No, they do. But my problem is we the helicopter parent thing and everything else, we don't, one, allow kids to be kids, and two, we don't make kids be kids. We elevate them to the status of they have an equal voice in the family dynamics. They have an equal voice in society dynamics. And I don't think that's a good thing, because they don't have the experiences yet to understand everything that's going on and why it is what it is. And it's not that they're not smart enough, but they don't have the mental development to understand the arguments that are being made. And then you put a device in their hands that they get total access to everything that everybody else gets to. And you can't tell me that then that doesn't warp their feelings about things.
Well, sure it does.
When they don't have all the abilities and tools yet to deal with the onslaught of information that they're going to receive through that device.
It absolutely affects them. I think the question becomes, are the effects a net positive or net negative? And it varies, clearly.
And I feel like it's a net negative because it's not their fault, but they don't have the wherewithal to deal with that, because there are development stages.
So you'd be contending they're exposed to too much too soon.
That the human brain goes through. Yes.
They shouldn't learn about massacre
and
in the
we,
Middle
being
East.
the adults, put too much validity into their opinions. I'm not saying no validity. I'm not saying they don't have a right to have a voice, but it seems like we start to follow.
It shouldn't be equal.
That voice, right? And it should not in any way be equal.
It shouldn't be elevated to the level of a senior lawmaker, for example. But then you get into, like the mass shootings and the kids being the ones that are leading the charge. Or, I mean, we go back to the Vietnam War, and you could argue that young people are the reason that it ended when it did. I mean, I'm saying you can I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just saying you could make those arguments that there have been some very consequential things throughout history that have been achieved because only young people were the ones that were dumb enough to take it on, because old people had become cynical or believed that it couldn't be changed, or that it shouldn't be changed, or that it'd be too tough to change.
But has anything changed with the school shootings? And how many of the school shootings are done by young people who have been affected by all of this information that they've seen?
School shootings might not be a great example, but then we'll use Vietnam as the example. I guess what I'm getting at is I'm just wondering, I don't know if I'm...
See, those young people that changed Vietnam were college age. I'm talking about these kids that are, the oldest are 22, but the youngest are 6 or 7.
Yeah,
I'm talking.
I know we're lumping a lot of them together, and I guess maybe that's part of the problem. Is should we be lumping?
There's a big difference between a 10 and 12-year-old who has an iPhone or an iPad,
yes,
and a 22-year-old college junior or senior.
Most of us probably wouldn't agree that you should show graphic images of death in the Middle East to a 7-year-old. But at the same time, we'd probably also mostly agree that there's no reason to withhold that from a 19-year-old. So I agree to an extent, I guess, of maybe we were kind of disagreeing about, I'm thinking about the older ones, and I'm thinking, I don't, because we decide that people are no longer kids when they turn 18. And that's a whole other thing, but
True. Well,
So the last thing
I was having that discussion with our Gen Zer before the show.
The self-empowered, I guess, and this is why we have these types of conversations. I took it a completely different route, and I was thinking about my experience of, the truth is I probably would not have, I don't know, because we can't just go back and change things and experiment with it, because otherwise we'd be able to learn all kinds of stuff. But I don't know if I would have come out at all until 3 or 4 years into college, because, and that's just an example, of in my life. And I'd imagine that for others, Not just those who are different in that respect, but in other ways too. If they live, especially in small towns, because it's a little different. If you go to a high school where there's 2,000 kids, it's more likely that you're going to be able to find somebody to connect with.
Sure.
Right.
Sure. And
if you go to Mechanicsburg High School, it's different. I mean, it's undoubtedly different. If you have a class of 100 kids or less, well, you might not have one of every shade of the rainbow.
Exactly.
So to speak. So I guess I was thinking about it they have the opportunity to find others who maybe have interests that they have that they can't otherwise find. So they maybe develop those interests earlier on. So maybe they don't go waste.
But where I'm coming from
money
is
doing things they don't want to do. I don't know.
When I was a kid and we all went to grandma's house with all the cousins and nieces and nephews and everybody, the adults were in the room talking. And if we came in to the room, we were told to get the heck out.
Right.
And now I have people to my homes and their little 4 and 5-year-olds sit there while the adults are, and 12-year-olds are sitting there while the adults are trying to have a conversation.
Yeah.
And it's like, you can't talk about the things the adults want to talk to. I mean, because I don't think you should in front of the, but
well, it's like the other day.
That's what I'm talking about is there's a place and a time for everything.
I was meeting with parents.
We were run out of the adult conversation. It's like, you kids go play. This is the adult room. This is where the adults are. And then we seem to have broken that barrier. And I'm questioning as to whether or not that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Is that a good thing?
Yes.
And what technology has done is opened up these young minds to a lot of things that maybe they shouldn't be seeing and hearing yet, along with, you know what I'm saying? Just because they can read it and understand it, they know the word. Do they really understand what it all means? And what's it doing to them depending on their stage of development?
No, I think, and this is why I love what we do at TrueChat, because this is evidence of, we both heard the same thing. I mean, I read this and Lance heard it and he read it and then gave it to me. And yet, there was two totally different viewpoints of how we were looking at it. I mean, let alone the conclusions we were coming to, because the reality is I agree with Lance from the standpoint of, I just had two parents that came in the other day and they brought their 4-year-old and we were in a meeting and the 4-year-old was there and I was trying to talk to them and it was nearly impossible because the 4-year-old continually made noise, and wouldn't be quiet. And the parents mainly just smiled at him and just kept handing them between each other, and I was ready to pull my hair out because I'm like, oh my God, this is taking twice as long as it needs to.
And the 4-year-old's running a business meeting.
Right. Exactly. They're distracting me and we're not getting anything done because you won't tell them to be quiet. And never told them to be quiet.
Right.
So yeah, from that standpoint, I think we go too far. We become a little too lenient in certain areas. But then I think on the flip side, we've had some overcompensation by the news media, not doing enough to cover, and they do this anyway, right? We don't cover enough of the positive things happening in the world, generally speaking.
Agree with that wholeheartedly.
And that includes then obviously by extension, technology. Like you found way inside I think it was the Wall Street Journal, the drones that were saving people in the mountains because that was the only way to get them medicine.
They could get medicines because the roads and bridges were out because of mudslide or rising.
But I bet most
rivers.
People never heard of that.
Right.
They never saw the story. They didn't know it was out there. And all they hear is mainly, drone hits person or drone makes noise or drone invades privacy or whatever. Yeah. Not that those things aren't true, but they don't cover the drone also saved people's lives because it enabled us to deliver medicine.
Right.
So it's like so many things, balance, right? It's
true. Very true.
We have to do a good job of making sure we examine the whole issue to the extent that any one of us can so that we don't unfairly frame things in a negative light. So, all right. Let us know your thoughts on today's show at TrueChat.org. And how can people listen, Lance? Tell them. What are all the ways?
We got Spotify, we got Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere that fine podcasts are found.
Gotcha. So lots of ways. Super easy.
At least 4.
Your challenge this year was to share it with a friend. It doesn't have to be a friend. Just,
I was going to say,
just share it with anybody.
I'm in trouble because you already listened. So I don't know. Right? Other than that, I don't know what I can do.
Okay. So sorry, that one.
It's a good one that I can tell somebody besides a friend because I'm pretty limited.
Yeah, you can tell. You can tell anybody as long as they listen. That's
all right. I'll get to work on it then.
Yes. Okay. So we really appreciate all of you tuning in for the State of Us on TrueChat in Urbana. I'm Justin T. Weller.
And I'm Lance Jackson.
Thanks so much for putting up with us. We'll see you on Wednesday. In the meantime, be the change.